Welcome, everybody, to The Life Between All or Nothing with Scott J.
And Mary Kay.
and Mary Kay. And this is all about making changes in your lives, making improvements in your life, no matter what stage you are in your life, whether you're just starting out, leaving your parents' house, whether you're in the middle of your 30s and making your way in the world, or if you're in your 50s and 60s and decide, I want to do something different. It's never too late to make changes to have a positive impact in your life. Right, Mary?
That's right. And also, even if you're in your 70s too, it's never too late and you're never too old.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, you can go up into your 80s and 90s for all I
There you
care, you
go.
know?
There you go.
No, that's all good. And before we start the show, because we have a great guest, and I'm really excited about this, so I want to jump into the guest quickly. Before we start the show, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of a man who's been very important in my life, my business partner, Karen Hurley's life, and my mother, all of my friends. His name was Charles Tuff, and we called him Denny. We called him Denny Tuff, and Denny was up in New York, and he passed away just at the end of last week. And
I'm
he's
sorry
going
for
to
your
be
loss,
missed.
Scott.
Well over 50 years in recovery. Every moment of that time was spent helping human beings. His house was open. His wallet was open. His heart was open. Everything he could do to help people. And I'm going to say hundreds, if not thousands of people right now that are living a great life and have extended families because of this man.
Wow.
And it would be wrong not to acknowledge him. Each show I do this week is going to be dedicated to Denny Tuff and his memory. And Denny, Godspeed. Thank you for everything, brother.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So moving on, and this is a topic tonight near and dear to my heart, which is about dealing with addictions and mental health. And Mary, tell me, how did you come across Jacques?
So I came across Jacques. I met him through Clubhouse, through one of our mutual friends, Christopher Rausch. He's a great connector. He's connected me to so many people. And, listening to Jacques' story, everything that he's been through from childhood through to teenagehood, through to some tragic things in his life, and yet he's still come out of it and is using that as his superpower to help others, and with a particular focus on men's mental health. So I met him and I just knew I had to get to know him, and here we are.
That's fantastic. We got people jumping in already. I just want to acknowledge
Hi,
everybody.
Karen.
Karen's with us. Judy is with us. Judy, thank you. Finally
Judy
made it to the show.
made
Thank
it,
you so
yes.
much. Sandy, my mom,
Sandy
is
Mom.
out
Hi,
there.
Sandy Mom.
Ron is sharing sympathy. Thank you, Ron.
Hi,
Appreciate
Ron.
it. And Karen reminded me, Denny had 53 years.
Wow.
And it was just before he passed, he reached the 53-year milestone. But anyway,
That's a
guys, thank
long
you. And for
time.
everybody else who's watching and joining us, thank you so much. Mary, let's talk about Jacques. Tell me about him.
Okay, I'm gonna read you a little. This is just a tiny bit about him.
Okay.
So Jacques Ecuyer, after overcoming a lifelong battle with mental health issues, how one man was able to survive and thrive while creating his own nonprofit organization, 4S for Life. He focused on advocating for better mental health services while helping to save as many lives as possible. And like I said, that's just a drop in the bucket of what makes up Jacques and everything that he does.
That is I spoke with him just for a few moments.
Yeah.
And it's 4s4life.com is his website. So I'm just going to throw it up there real quick so people will see it. We'll keep reminding people throughout the show, 4s4life.com. But I'm really excited. This is one of those guys I'm just dying to get on the air. So let's bring him in.
Let's bring him in. Welcome, Jacques.
Jacques, coming to us from the middle of New York State, Lake George area. Beautiful, beautiful place to be. Little cold right now, though, right?
No, actually, it's not bad. It was actually 52 degrees today up here, so it's nice. It's a nice mild winter we've had.
Wow,
it's mild here too until
That's
tomorrow.
Amazing.
We're gonna get it tomorrow here.
Christopher Rausch is shooting in, saying "Amazing souls up here."
Mr.
Chris,
Rausch
we love
right
you, brother.
there.
Yeah, he's the connector here. That Christopher Rausch is the connector between Jacques and I, and really Scott, you and I as well, because it was through Lynn,
Yeah, Lynn, who
which
brought
was
us
through
together.
Christopher.
Hey, I'm friends
We
with
should
Lynn too. Right? It's amazing how we're all
see
friends with everybody. See,
We're
it's
all
that great
connected.
circle. Yeah.
3 degrees of separation.
And joining us as well is Robert Tuff, Bob. Everybody calls him Bobby. Bobby Tuff, who is Denny's son. And
Oh wow.
we just talked about your dad, and God bless your brother, and
Yeah.
condolences.
Yeah, condolences.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
Condolences.
And thanks for being here tonight. Your father was a good man, and so are you.
Hmm.
All right. So let's get to the show. So much going on here. First of all, Jacques, tell us briefly, before we get into the whole backstory, just you're doing now, you've got this nonprofit 4S for Life. What exactly is that?
So 4S for Life. First off, the 4S's stand for strength, struggles, sacrifice, and survival. So you can apply it to anything. And basically our main mission is to help combat mental health, illnesses and raise awareness across the globe. And that's including everything from bullying right up through suicidal ideology. So, and everything in between.
Wow.
Wow.
And Jacques, you've had, I mean, your life is everything in between, right? I mean, bullying.
Pretty much.
Tell us, a little bit about your childhood and bullying experience and how that set the stage for what was to come later.
All right. So yeah, the beginning of my story is so it was 4th and 5th grade, both years, 2 different males. So basically it was physical, emotional, stuffed in the trash cans, physically beat up, called names, spit on. I mean, you name it. I got chased home from school 9 times out of 10, 4 out of 5 days of the week. I would wait inside school until they were gone. Sometimes they would leave and I would escape. Some days I got chased all the way home. And, I never understood why, because I was a good student. I was brought up in a Catholic household. My mother was Italian, very Roman Catholic Church. I was an altar boy. I was a lector. I was good in sports. I was a good student. I was a decent looking kid. And I could never figure out why. Like, why was I the target? Still to this day, I don't know why I was the target. But now that I understand bullying, it's something was lacking in their lives. And I just happened to be the person in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I got the brunt of that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a great insight, but obviously this is an insight that you've gained later. So during that time, it must have been really, really confusing because, there's some people to say that I get picked on because I'm short, or I get picked on because I'm skinny, or because I'm overweight. You had there was nothing to even connect this. So what did you do in your mind to survive that at the time?
Well, and I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, and I said, and my sister, and who is the matriarch now. Both of my parents have passed, and I always reach out to my sister, and I said, boy, thinking back, I never shared with anyone. My parents never knew. I never told anybody. I would go home and hide in my room. See, kids nowadays can't do that because you have cyberbullying. Back then, our escape was you just go in your room. I would draw. I was very into collecting baseball cards. I would go through that. I'd play with toys. I was very good at being a loner when I was a kid. So I could do a lot of things. I didn't need anybody around to focus on what. So I had a lot of different outlets to just sort of put all that by the wayside. I would get home and you take that deep breath and you're like, oh, survived another day. You know what? Maybe I got home that day and I didn't get, my ass kicked on the way home. And it was just like, oh, thank God. You know what? I feel better. And then you'd get that anxiety the next morning because you knew you'd go into school and where am I going to run into so-and-so? Am I going to see him before school, during school, after school? So yeah, it was a constant battle with anxiety every day for 2 years solid, two solid school years, anxiety every day.
Wow. I can totally relate to that, Jacques, because I had that bullying experience as well, and I hid it from my parents too. I had reached out to one teacher at one point, and nothing happened. And my parents were so in my 7-year-old mind stressed out with being new immigrants to Canada. We came from the UK, and I didn't think I could tell them. Plus, I also had a role to play where I was taking care of my little brother. So I hid it as well. And my outlet was books. And I lived in the fantasy worlds that were created in those books. And even when the bullying stopped, when we moved and I was in grade 5, I had already built that bully inside me. So it didn't matter that there was no bully. It came with me. So I can totally relate to how you felt as a child.
Can you think about any reason why you didn't say anything to your family? I don't know if you can remember back at that time, but was there because I know some parents aren't open to those kind of discussions. You know, I didn't say a lot to my family when I was young, and I kept a lot of emotions inside about how I was feeling because everybody else was struggling with their own things, and I felt like I didn't want to be the burden, and I felt like I was supposed to be strong and be okay. But was there a reason that you kept that to yourself?
Well, I think it's like anything else. I didn't want to tell anybody because I was either afraid it would get back to them. Maybe if I told my parents, they would call their parents. The next thing I know, I'd get a worse beating the next day.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the way you're thinking. You're like, man, I don't want to let anyone know because God forbid they find out. So I already have a target on my back. So now I'm going to make it 10 times worse by compounding that. Because the way my parents were, my mother would have been on the phone with somebody. Listen, my mother would have been on the phone with somebody's parents, cussing them out. It would have been like that. And the other thing that was really ironic is when my sister and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about my mother. She's been gone now since 1991. She died at 47 years old from breast cancer.
Oh my God.
So that stemmed apart with, as we get into the story, with my mild PTSD and my addiction. And a lot of it came, dealing with that. But in any case, we were talking about how my mother wanted to try to fit in. Now, we don't know. She came from a background of both parents being alcoholics, and my grandfather was abusive to my grandmother. So I've seen the domestic violence end of that. We're not sure if something else would happen between my grandfather and my mom and her sister. My father sort of alluded to it before he passed, but we never really figured out. We're not sure. So my mother had this complex of not feeling good enough that she didn't. So she always had to try to live above where she was. The way she dressed, how we looked in public was a reflection on her. So even with the bullying tied in, I didn't want anything because I was afraid it would detriment the way she looked, and I didn't want her to, so it was just a roving compound of I had nowhere really to go with that.
That's like a whole family system of stifle it and stuff it and try to just act different than how you really felt. And, I think that's quite common in families, I believe.
Yeah. It's a system, like you said.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the case. And I said this to my sister. I said, I wish I knew what I knew now, because my mother was worth, her weight in gold. And, to know that she felt that way, that she was not good enough, that she didn't fit in, that she wasn't worthy of certain things, really makes me sad. It really makes me, I wish I knew all of what I've been through now, and so I could help my mom when she needed it. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
This is exactly, we were talking before we went on the air, and I want to get back to your story because I love this. But we were talking on the air why it's so important to drop the stigma, talk about mental health openly and honestly, and start when kids are young. They're teaching them everything in school, and 90% of the things that they're teaching kids in junior high, in middle school, and high school is stuff that just doesn't even make any sense. We're trying to create new ways to add 2 + 2, but we're not talking to them about depression, anxiety, and mental health and what to do when it comes up in your family or in you. And we're not normalizing it, and it should start in our early childhood. Perhaps that might have made a difference with you.
Yeah.
Very good chance I probably did. Like I said, I wish I did know that back then. And now, but it's really interesting to the way we all, and I'm sure I can speak for both of you, that when you look back in retrospect on what you've been through and where we are, and you're like, wow. And that's why when people ask me, do you ever regret, do you regret what you've been through, the addiction and everything? And I said, no, because it made me the person if I didn't go through all of these trials and tribulations throughout my life, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing now. And obviously that was my purpose. So that purpose was for me to deal with all of that, to get to this point, to say, you know what, now I'm going to take everything that happened to me and I'm going to turn it into something positive. We're going to try to recreate something. And that being men's mental health. And I'm a huge advocate on that, because we need, and I've said this to Mary, and Chris is on there now, that we need to shatter the alpha male complex. That's bullshit. Whoever came up with that, it's crap. You know what? I don't want to hear anything more about this alpha male stuff. A true alpha male is one that accepts their masculine and feminine energies as a complete vessel. That is a true man. A true man shows vulnerability. A true man will cry. A true man will show his emotions. will voice his opinions, will share with his partners and his family. That's an alpha male, not the guy in the gym bench pressing 400 pounds. That's bullshit.
Amen.
Wow. Wow.
Amen to that.
Good news. Chris just chimed in and said his son's school, elementary school, is actually starting emotional intelligence training for children.
Awesome. That's great.
That is freaking fantastic. But what you just said there about shattering the myth about what man is, you know, we've developed this system. I'm a grown ass man. I'll do what I want, and I'm, you know, this. You know what a grown ass man does? He says, "I'll be home at 5 o'clock." Guess what time you're home? You're home at 5 o'clock. You take care of your loved ones, and you allow them to take care of you as well by being available to them emotionally and mentally. A lesson that took me over 50 years to learn in my life is to be emotionally available to people and not to always pretend everything's okay, which is what I thought a man had to do. So I appreciate you for saying that, man. That's great, brother. So we've gone through school. We're going through this bullying stuff, and where did that develop to next for you?
So let's see, 4th, 5th grade, and then you know, after I was not getting, you know, picked on, those two kids had moved on to either other people, or I think they went to different schools, whatever. Somehow I escaped that. So, you know, I mean, and then again, through middle school, I was very active. I was like, I would get involved in like plays. I was always the lead in a play. I was very active in a lot of different things. I was a lector in church. So that's how I learned to speak in front of people. I learned to read in front of hundreds of people in the church. So we went from Catholic school to my high school was a public school. So it was actually predominantly Black. So I was a minority. And I had to adjust to that. It was a whole new ball game because I had gone to a Catholic school where we had 2 African-American children in the school. And now I'm the minority. Like I'm walking down the hall and I'm the minority. Like I'm that low percentage. Like, wow. But I was good at sports, and that was my thing. I could play basketball. I could play football. So I learned how to associate myself and sort of fit into the mold of what the school had to offer as far as the majority and the minority of the people that were there. You know, I got mixed in a bad crowd, 8th grade, going to 9th grade, and further, you know, a heavy alcohol problem. So I was going through about freshman year of high school, about 1.5 liters of Southern Comfort a day.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Heavy liquor, hard liquor. And then, and I try to speed it up because I mean, the story could take, I could write books. I'm not good at that yet. I'll get there, but, I sort of skipped over marijuana and went right to cocaine. Cocaine was my next big thing. And you know, it provided that escape, but also that adrenaline rush, that energy, that unstoppable feeling like, man. And there was times where I would sit back and I'd say, man, I'm never going to get bullied again or picked on. And I'm going to impose my will on people. I'm going to be that guy, you know, in that mode, because it changes the way you look at things. And I became, I became the thing that I despised when I was a kid. I became the bully. I became the one that would go out and get into fights with people and just start imposing my will, because everything that was pent up from childhood. And now with the drugs and the alcohol, more or less the cocaine, but you felt like, okay, nothing's going to stop me. I'm a steaming locomotive, and I'm just going to smash everything in my path. And that's it. That's how it's going to be. And, you know, it was very scary. And the point that I came to was after like I think it was either a 48 or 72 hour bender of alcohol and cocaine. I woke up at a friend's house. I didn't even know where the hell I was when I woke up. And it was like people like just laying over people and on couches and shit. And I got up and went to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I looked like a 60-year-old man. I looked at myself and I went, all right, I can't do this anymore. I have to ask for help. And that started my path into recovery.
Now, during those moments, I mean, and I think this is important because a lot of times we become the monster that we fear. We become this, and which happened to me. And, you know, because there were some issues of, you know, just because of my past and my background as a child, there was some abuse that was going on and some things that were happening. And I never talked about it. I always kept it, you know, tight. I think I tried to bring it up to my father once, and he goes, you know, stop whining. You know, it was one of those deals. And and so I actually became an abusive parent, and I became the abuser. I became the monster that I feared. Did you have moments where you started to see yourself that way? And then, you know, because I had these like brief moments where I'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing? But then alcohol and drugs made it all better. So I just kept going. Did you have those moments, those moments of clarity?
I had a few throughout, even as I got into like older, where just people have been pointing out to me, but I used to feel bad, like when I would get into
Yeah.
fights and I would actually physically hurt somebody. I was sick to my stomach afterwards. Even in the moment, I didn't feel it. I didn't feel anything. I saw red. I just saw anger. I saw rage, and this is it. But after it, I always had remorse afterward. And I can honestly say that I always felt bad that maybe I hurt that person. Thank God I didn't kill anybody, but I injured them to a point of, man, I just, it would beat myself up for days afterward. And I realized that I became, like you said, I became the monster that haunted me as a child, and I could not go down that path. It wasn't fair to anybody else. Who am I to impose my will on everybody else?
Right.
I don't have that right.
Wow.
So yeah, the drugs definitely enhanced the rage and the anger, and then of course in that time frame, my mother passed away in '91. So I mean, I was to the point where I went over to a buddy's house, and I went out the night before she passed. I had to get out of the house, and I sort of lost my composure at his house. I ended up knocking a door off the hinge. I punched the door right off the hinges, punched holes in his wall. Thank God he was a cool dude. Like, he understood, and I felt bad, but I'm destroying his apartment. But I was in that rage because I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. My mother, and I had a great relationship, and I wanted to know why she was taken so early, and the way she was taken, and she didn't deserve this. And I went through that whole. That's where it started to really, really sink in, where it was almost like a switch. Bam, and I turned into a totally different person after that.
Well, how exactly did that work? Because it sounds to me like you were dealing with her death in a drunken and drug-fueled rage. So where did it switch from that to, oh my God, there's a light coming on in my life?
When I saw her getting carried up my driveway in a body bag the next day, that was the finality of the whole. That's the last vision I have of my mother, is getting carried up my driveway in a body bag. And I think everything sank in at that point because of the relationship that I had with my mother. I mean, I was very close to her, and the night before she passed, when I went out, I went in and said she had the death rattle. She was just sitting. She was laying awake in bed. She was there, but she was a zombie. She was on so much morphine. It was just, her eyes were open, her mouth was open. She was there, but she wasn't there. She wasn't present. So I just went in. I gave her a kiss. My father was there. I still remember my sister and her husband and my mother's best friend, who was a nurse, actually left they lived about 4 streets over, but she left her family and came and stayed at our house just to be with my mother. So Linda was awesome to my mom. She was like a saint. So anyway, I went out and I said to my dad, I was like, hey, get some rest. I need to get out. And he understood I needed to get out. Didn't know what I was doing. I didn't tell him, hey, I'm going to go out and, do this and drink and, whatever. But I just told him how to get out. So I came home the next morning. She died at 10:10. I remember my younger brother coming in. He was in tears and woke me up. And I went in and she was gone. So not the way I would have written that ending for her or myself or my family, because I don't think it was fair to her, to my family, or to me, the way that I handled that. I think it was very unfair. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's about being fair or unfair. We're only capable of what we're capable of at that moment in our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
If you could have been different, you would have been different. At that time, you weren't ready to be different. So don't carry that, brother. But I feel for you. It's so unfortunate that it takes tragedy to wake us up to certain things in our lives. So you come back and now you've got your final vision. And does this start opening up the floodgates of your emotions at this point now, or where are we at where are we at with Jacques at this point?
Jacques still having a hard time comprehending, mom's passing, or we like to call it her transition. I don't like to ever say she died. I like to say that she transitioned from the physical sense to the spiritual. It makes it sound so much better too when you just say, "Oh, somebody died." Well, no, they made a transcendence from one, to the other. But so then it just started turning into, I was still in that drug alcohol phase where I would just go out and I'd party all the time, and I know my father worried and never tell him where I'm going. I came home one night. I got jumped in some small town over here by 4 different guys. Ended up getting the best of them, but I came home on a bloody mess. I came home to get a baseball bat, and I was going to go over there again and go after him. My father stopped me. Now, my father was 6'4", 290 pounds, so he's a very big man. So when he tells you to stop, you stop.
Stop, yeah.
But so it was a lot of just that. It was just a lot of trying to medicate with alcohol and drugs, and
Yeah.
started getting in with the wrong crowd and started hanging with the wrong people. And a lot of other drugs were passed around. I didn't get involved in them, but there was crack involved, there was heroin involved, there was a lot of other things getting passed around the places that I was hanging out. So it was a very bad situation.
Yeah. So you were in the lifestyle, even if you weren't doing those
Yeah.
things. You were around it and part of that whole crowd.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yep.
anything could have happened.
Oh yeah,
how,
absolutely.
How old were you at this point?
Let's see. So my mother passed in 91. I'm 51 now, so I had to be 20. Yeah, probably about 20 years old. So just after high school, took a year off before I went to college, and dropped out of college after my mother passed away, and never finished because I was just I couldn't associate anything anymore. It was almost like my mother was my world, and my whole world had collapsed. Like everything, even though my dad was still here, my siblings, everything else, friends, but my mother was my world. And, to have that taken from me emotionally crushed me at that point. I mean, I was devastated.
Wow.
Yeah, of course.
Wow. Mary, this is awesome listening to this. And Jacques, I can't tell you how much I thank you for being so honest about, your progression and what happened with your family. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But at the same time, you just said that these pains and these missteps have now become your strength in helping other people. So I appreciate you for that. So where do we go from here? You're kind of out there, you're floundering around, you've lost your mom. Alcohol and drugs are still your crutch to get through your day. And you kind of like losing your direction because you're not going to college anymore or anything else. Where does Jacques go from there?
Oh, Jacques keeps spending money on drugs and alcohol, and then he sinks into a deep depression, and it was a very depressive state. And I just didn't know where to turn, even though like a lot of people will say nowadays, oh, I don't know where to go, I don't know where to seek support. Well, back then we didn't have as much as we have to offer people nowadays. Like where we're talking now, present day, we didn't have that 30 years ago. I mean, there were things, but it wasn't as prevalent. So there really wasn't a lot of avenues or that I could reach out to. So it was sort of like, man, I'm just going to suffer in silence. And that's exactly what I did. And it was the alcohol and the drugs and the bad crowds and staying out all night, not coming home for 4 or 5 days, not calling my dad, telling him where I was. He was always, worried about me. I was always the black sheep. And I always, regretted putting him through a lot of that. I mean, I do hold a lot of weight with my parents because, I put him through a lot of shit that I shouldn't have. And, it wasn't fair to them to have them worry, to have them, constantly on edge and what's going to happen. Am I going to be, they're going to get a phone call where I'm going to end up dead or in a car wreck or overdosing or, it just wasn't fair to them. Looking back now, I mean, obviously I can't see that at the time,
right?
But right now, it's looking back as we're having this conversation, I wish I did things differently, to a certain extent, and just reached out a little bit. I know my dad would have listened. I mean, maybe he wouldn't have understood it fully, but he would have listened. He would have sat there, and he did eventually, because when I did come to the realization, as I just told you, after the bender, and what I did was, after I looked in that mirror, I actually went home and said to my father and my older siblings, I need help. And this is what's been going on. And I literally admitted, listen, this is what I'm doing. Drugs, alcohol. I need help, because if not, I'm going to fucking die. I will be dead. I will not, or I'll be in jail, one or the other. It's going to happen. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I think, just getting a hug from my dad. And again, that was him understanding, maybe not to the complexity that I wanted to, but he understood that his son needed help. And we didn't have the money for detox. I think I've told Mary this story. If not, I know it was Chris. And I didn't have it. So my detox was getting locked in a bedroom, like you see in the movies when you go through the night sweats and the night terrors and all that shit, and the vomiting and the things that you see on TV. It's 100 times worse when you're going through it that way. But you know what? It got me to where I needed to be.
Yeah. And just for people out there who are listening, we do not recommend that detox
at all.
Right.
No,
at all. If you can't afford to go to detox, go to a hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go to a hospital.
Absolutely.
Tell them you're sick. They have to help you.
They have to.
Doing it at home is so dangerous. Thank God that you made it through that. Yeah. But with an alcohol addiction, especially with alcohol, it can be so seriously dangerous.
It can be.
With your blood pressure, your heart, and everything else that goes on. But anyway, thank God that happened for you. I'm just curious, though. It was like, what was it in you? Because I know you had that moment where you're just like, I got to get some help and stuff. But at that time, we're talking 30 years ago, it's not like it was a really big talking about people helping themselves and doing those kind of things. So how did you come to that conclusion that this is what I need to do? Where did that come from, do you believe?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think it came from my mother looking down on me. I think she was saying, listen, I know that wasn't the path that I was chosen for. And I just knew that I've always believed, because my mother always called me the unique one. That was her nickname for me. I can show you post. Oh, she always called me. It was so
No, I love
ironic
that. Love
that we're talking about this, but she always called me every time she signed a card, a postcard. It was always "Love you, my son, the unique one." And
Wow.
so that resonates with me because there was a reason that she called me the unique one, whatever that universe provided. So back then, even though I didn't see what we're doing now, but obviously this was where I was supposed to be. So all of that happened, I was still supposed to survive that. So it just had to, I think it was just my mother being by my side going, listen, this is not you. This is not the way I raised you. This is not what you're meant to do. Let's change this. Even though it wasn't in the physical sense, even though it wasn't her really saying those words, I think I just, and I can't remember completely, but I think I felt her, and I believe that it was her guiding me all along for the last 30 years. It's been my mom.
Wow. And you listened, thank goodness.
I always listen to mom. Everyone listens to mom. If you're smart,
big
you listen
influence.
to mom.
So that was very brave. Yeah. That was very brave of you, Jacques, back then, because it wasn't talked about and it wasn't safe, or people might not have felt safe or comfortable to talk about these things. And yet you went and faced your dad and said, I need help. Now you've become the person that you needed back then, right? You're that person to a whole host of other people. And, I so admire you for that, for doing that.
Well, the admiration goes both ways. I mean, for people, even like listening to Scott's a little bit of his story before, I mean, all of us, and you and I have talked about this, we all cross paths for a reason. And the thing is that we don't try to understand it. You don't try to make light of it. You just know that people were put in your path. And that's why I always thank Chris, with Raw and Unscripted, and that transcended everything. Chris and Scott Goyette and Walter McKay, and we can go right down the line. Lynn, I mean, and all those people that have all come together, and we all, if we all just combined our superpowers, just think of how much we could change the world. I mean, that's the key, right? Strength in numbers. Let's all get together and say, hey, take the world by the head and shake them and go, listen, wake the fuck up. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to change, because coronavirus is not the real pandemic. Mental health is the real pandemic. That's what the cause of this fucking shitload of problems is, mental health, because we're not addressing it. We're not raising awareness. We're not attacking it. We're putting it to the wayside because it's taboo. We don't want to talk about it. It doesn't happen in our neighborhoods. It's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. And we all have voices. The three of us here, Christopher, everybody else, we all have a voice and platforms now, right? Let's use them. Let's use them and scream this stuff from the rooftops.
Now, people, you're going to have to dig through a lot of crap to get to good podcasts. I'm going to tell you that right now, because everybody with a microphone and a laptop thinks they could do a podcast, and there's people out there just putting crap out there. There's people that are just sitting there and they turn it on and they get high on the air and they think it's fun, and they make, or they're making booger jokes, and they're doing different things. Although boogers are still funny, so I'm gonna
they are funny.
We'll keep that in our mix.
They are funny.
But we have come across. Thank God for people like Lynn Serrano and Chris Roush and guys like Walt McKinley, who's going to be starting his podcast very shortly with his wife, who's going to tell his story. There's people out there that are genuinely out there trying to make a difference, trying to do something different, and we appreciate all of them. That's what brought Mary and I together. And as soon as we met, we knew we had to do a project together. And thank God we do, because this is really close to my heart, spending my time with her in finding people like you, Jacques. But let's go back to your story, because I don't want to take us too far off of that, because we're getting into the now, because you've made a decision. Your mother, who we'll call your guardian angel, has now helped you, and you found something. What was your journey like from there? I mean, was it, as soon as you started to clear up, did your path become apparent, or was there a struggle there? Because the mental health still had to be dealt with, right?
Oh yeah, the mental health still had to be dealt. And real quick, to talk about my mother being a guardian angel. So the one reason I believe in this whole thing is, one night I was just before I had talked to my father, I was in my home and I was going to my bedroom and I felt this bright light behind me. And this was a few days after my mother had passed. And I turned around, and I'm not going to say that it was her definitely, but it was the apparition of a woman. It was like, like I believe in angel. After that happened, I'm getting chills now because when I saw that and I turned around, turned back, and it was gone. And I honestly believe that was my mother, and I was the only one that saw it. So I believe that was her reaching out to me. So this is why I hold my mother in very high regard and where she is here and here. So
yeah.
So the path, going forward after getting the help and starting on that road to recovery. So now we're getting into getting older, 20s into your 30s. Got married, had kids, got married for the wrong reason. I had kids with, with a woman. There was no love there. She was very verbally abusive too. Like it was a very toxic relationship. There was no love there. It was just, we had kids. That was the way I was raised. Yeah. And I was going to stand by my kids until I realized, okay, we can't keep doing this for the kids because it's not going to help them. It's going to harm them. Mm-hmm. So, obviously divorce. Then I had to, tell my kids that dad had to leave. My sons were young at the time. And that was the next crushing moment, is having them tell them that daddy has to leave. One of us had to leave that home. Right. And I chose to leave and leave her with everything. And I just went off and I got an apartment with a buddy of mine. But to leave my sons was crushed. That was the next devastating thing that I had to go through, was to see my little boys looking at me and daddy tell them they had to leave. Because then they think, what did I do wrong? It wasn't anything you did wrong. Daddy just has to leave. Yeah. And it really, really, really hurt, which is when I was into that stage again, dealing with depression. I had met my now current wife. And 4 months into us dating at that time is what led to the first suicide attempt. I had enough, and I decided that it was time to go. And so I took the first attempt on my own life.
Now, you never brought alcohol and drugs back into the mix during that time?
Drugs, I've never done drugs since then. Alcohol, even now, I can go out with buddies and have a beer or two, and I can cut that off, but I don't touch liquor. It's just beer, and it's right. More of a social thing. So I know, I don't go out to get drunk anymore. I go out, I have a few, a beer or 2 beers. I'll have a glass of wine with my wife at dinner, but nothing to the extent of what I was dealing with back then.
Right. Okay. All right. But so I'm not saying you weren't diving back into that old behavior. So the mental health was really becoming a whole nother problem now for you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Then it was expanding. So I mean, when we look at mental health, you look into, you follow the path, bullying, dealt with domestic violence with my grandparents. So we covered 2 there. We go into drug addiction. Then we go into depression. Losing my mom was a mild form of PTSD. We're crossing into that. Now we're into suicide. Then we're into suicidal ideologies, because I didn't even put the thought to it. I saw black. I saw a tunnel. I got the idea, and I don't normally share it, but I can share the attempt. Was my now wife was in the apartment. I just sort of went out in the kitchen. I grabbed the knife out of the cutlery set. I went out and sat on my porch, and I attempted to slit my own throat. And she's the one that stopped it.
Wow.
And I'm sorry to anyone in the audience that was a little too graphic. I don't normally share it, but you know what? That real is
I think
real.
it's important. I think it's important that, we're not doing this to shock people. We're doing this to let people know that this is real. This is real. It takes very little for those pervasive thoughts to become action if we don't do something with them. I assume this whole time you're never telling anybody how you feel about the darkness inside of you, right?
Nope. Just letting it fester, just like we were talking about, as we're going to get into with men speaking up, which is I didn't do it. I just let it just sit here and fester, and it just got bigger, and it was like a cancer. It was like a fucking tumor just sitting here and growing.
Wow.
And it takes over.
It does. And it did. Yeah. And I thank God for my wife. And here's the thing. When we talk about, being available for crisis and how to detach and not go into that panic mode. So I always commend my wife for this. So we have been dating for 4 months. Now she could have been like, this guy's crazy. He's out of his mind. I've just got to get out of the situation. But what she did is, and I don't even know how she knew. I had the knife to my throat. In the process, she came barreling out of the house, like right through the screen door, grabbed my arm with both her hands. And instead of saying, the world needs you, the world will be a better place, she said, it's me, it's Katrina. I love you. I need you. She started mentioning my sons by name. So it gets you to sort of she was getting me to associate faces, and very smart, because this is a woman that's never been trained, but for some reason,
Wow.
Maybe it was my mom again. I don't know. Maybe,
Mm.
I don't know. Somebody was, but she's had that. And after, I want to say between 7 and 10 minutes, again, this was a blackout stage, that she was able to finally get me to slowly, release that and bring me back into some type of coherence. And we never talked about it until, and again, Mary, if I shared this, I'm sure I shared this with you. So I had my own
No,
podcast for a
share.
while. Okay. So I had my own podcast for a while, and the audience wanted her to come on as a guest to talk about the other side of suicide. So the person that would have been left behind, or the person that prevented it. And I wasn't sure because my wife is not an extrovert. She said yes. So we brought her on, and the producer is actually a friend of mine and my wife. He's known both of us for about 20 years. And so we started talking about things, and he goes, "Can I ask Katrina a question?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Why did you stay?" That's a very fair question. I mean, that was all he asked her.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready for the answer. And no, I wasn't, because because we had never talked about it. We brushed it under, like, so she looked at him, she looked at me, and she said, "I saw something in him. I knew I couldn't live without him." And I broke down because I never felt that I deserved to be loved like that. And she knew this after how many months of dating? This was obviously later, but she realized at that point that she had found something within me that mattered to her that much. And I was speechless. I was blown the fuck away, because I've never been loved like that. I mean, not my parents, that's one, but loved by another individual that deeply. To this day, I commend her, because without her, I wouldn't be here. For Us for Life wouldn't be. None of this would happen. It's her. It's all because of her.
Wow. So
that's amazing.
I would assume that prompted you to just starting to open up from that point.
Yes, that after so that we had that one, and my other attempt was actually that was the one time I did try to do pills and swab them down with alcohol, because I figured it was a lot quicker to go that way.
Right.
Well, just because it was just, anyway. So yeah, so after we had talked after the podcast, and we slowly built a relationship, and my wife has been through her own share of trauma, family trauma, and I think that's what made that cohesion between the two of us, is that we were both damaged souls, and we came together, and I was able to open up to her, and she knows everything. I know everything about her, our past. Every time I come home from work, she asks me how my day was, without fail. Every day for the last, I don't know how many years, she always asks me, "How was your day?" And if it wasn't a good day, I'll say, I had a rough day. And she'll go, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I said, "Not right now." Okay. And she leaves me alone, because she knows I'm going to revisit it. And at some point during that day, I will come back and I'll say, "Honey, hey, listen, can I just talk?" And she goes, "Yep. Do you want me just to listen, or do you want my opinion?" I said, "Can you just listen?" And she'll just listen. And that's what makes it work. So what I'm exuding as we get into that part of it is to all the men out there. And I think I've asked Mary this question when we were on Clubhouse, is what a partner wants to see or expects from their other half. They just want us to be open. They want us to be able to share. We have to let them in, because if we don't allow them into our space, the next step in that path is they'll take the blame, because all of a sudden they think, "Wow, what am I doing wrong? The relationship is failing. He's not talking. What am I doing wrong? Am I doing this? Should I do this?" And it's not fair to your partner. So the best thing for you to do, and this is to all the men watching out there, is to allow your other half into your world. And believe me, your relationship will blossom into something you never thought it could be.
It can become so impossibly incongruent to come home and say, "I'm fine, everything's fine," but then to act in a manner that is not fine. And it confuses families. It scares families. People become, it's much more fair to everyone in the family unit, especially your spouse. It's much more fair to just open up. It was a lesson it took a long time in my life to learn, is my answer doesn't have to be okay every time. I don't have to be okay all the time. It's okay not to be okay. And I did not know that. I thought that it lessened me, and my parts of my childhood and parts of my early adulthood was all spent in me being okay for everybody else and not really dealing with my own shit. And so it was a lesson learned late. And unfortunately, relationships, and even with my kids, there were a lot big divisions that were created because I would not be honest and be a real man who is truthful about what's going on with him. Right. So you're in this position now, and which is now I'm happy to get to this point where we're talking
Yeah.
about you've started to discover the secret to yourself, and probably very helpful for every other male person out there. Start talking, start opening up, stop trying to hide all the dark stuff. How did your life change when that all started happening? I mean, did it change in a lot of ways?
Well, I think when I first started, so I started the organization, or I came up with the concept right at my father passed away in 2013. So it was right after he passed away. I just started jotting things down. I said to my wife, I said, I think I found my calling after talking to my dad. I need to help people. Like, I think I've done enough and I've been through enough where I just got this feeling, whether that was my mom and my dad, or maybe it was my dad at that time, was pointing me in that direction. So I came up with the concept and I started raising money for other organizations, which was like St. Jude's and Ronald McDonald House here and just other places. But I lacked the connection. Like, when I was raising money and raising awareness, I could hand you a check to hand to somebody else, but I want to have that connection with the person I'm trying to help.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what, why not do it on my own? So I started to do it, and I did it for like as a charity organization for like the first 2 years, and I was doing everything by myself, and it just got overwhelming. So I put a board of directors on, got the 501c3. We are, a nonprofit. And during COVID, we were doing things outside the box, but still pertaining to mental health in a roundabout way. Like, I opened a community store for low-income families and elderly to come in and shop. We set up a makeshift store. It was donation-based, and they could come in and shop for free. So the elderly weren't getting pushed around the stores, and the low-income family, they could just get everything for a week and come back week to week. So I did that, and I think I ended up feeding 1,300 families. We did 6 backpack programs for schools. And I also did an initiative called Feed the Front Lines. And what that was is that someone would come to me and donate money, and I would go to a local restaurant during COVID that was suffering, and I would order food from them and in turn feed a frontline staff. I fed 330 frontline staffs. Meanwhile, doing the community store, working a job, taking care of my wife, taking care of the dogs, doing all this in 24 hours a day, and just keep on doing it. So I did all of that, plus God knows whatever else we did. So it pushed the organization to the forefront. So all of a sudden, all these other nonprofits were sitting on their asses doing nothing. And people were watching what I was doing. They're like, this guy, I'm donating money, and this guy's doing exactly what he said he's going to do. And I'm all over Facebook, and I'm doing lives, and I'm on the news, and I'm on podcasts and radio shows. And I said to my wife, I go, I didn't think any of this was going to happen. Like, I never thought it would get to this level. I just, one man doing on a mission to help, raise awareness. And now all of a sudden, whoo, bam. And I'm like, holy crap. So it just blew up. Yeah.
I have to share this.
Wow.
Brandon Scott, it's like somebody you know.
Yep.
He says, he's commenting. He says, love you, brother Jacques. Glad you are still here. One of the strongest and most selfless individuals I know. He has helped me immensely through my own struggles with my mental health or lack thereof. Love you, brother. And yes, I agree.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, to get a testimonial like that live on the show, it means everything. How did this come to focus on mental health, though? Because you're doing all this charitable work. At what point did it start to become the main focus was about the mental health, or was it always there with you?
I think it always was. And I think, like when people would say to me, well, what does opening a community store have to do with mental health? Okay, well, if you're a low-income family and one of your spouse loses a job and you can't afford to feed your kids, what does it affect? Your mental health. Okay, frontline staff, they're out there, they're going, like some of these, like my brother is an anesthesiologist, but he was doing rotations down in Princeton. So he sent me pictures and he looked god awful. Like, he looked exhausted. And I was worried about my brother. So I said, why don't we take care of those staffs? Well, you're feeding frontline staffs. What does that have to do with their mental capacity? Because now they know that somebody gives a shit, that we want them to be healthy so they can keep us healthy. So I think mental health was always in the background. It just took it didn't even take a back seat. I just think it blossomed into so many other things that people realized that the organization I created was not, here's tunnel vision where we only focus on one thing. I can do a march like I do every year, a 22-mile walk for veteran suicide. And 2 days later, I can go do a talk on addiction. And then the next 3 days later, I can go do a talk on bullying. So we're so diverse that we can bounce around. And the board has got a lot of people that are, psychiatrists and child and family services. And, they're educated individuals that we can channel out to a lot of other sources. If I can't do it, we can outsource, but use us as the stepping stone. So we just want to be that first step. We want to be that person you say, who can I call when I'm in that moment of crisis? Well, damn it, you can call us and we'll take care of it from there. All you got to do is pick up the phone, send us a message, reach out. And that's for anyone out there that's watching. I don't care where you're in the country. 4S for Life. Reach out to me directly. I'm here.
That's amazing, Jacques. Now, tell us about your t-shirt.
Oh, there we go. So what we're talking about, it's hashtag man up, not shut up. So basically what I did is I had created a group before COVID, and then obviously COVID shut all our in-person meetings down because, of the pandemic. So what this is to teach men that it's okay to be vulnerable, shatter the alpha male complex, but be able to share in a space that's safe and secure. So it's a private Facebook group. You have to answer 3 questions to get in. I approve everybody. It has 94 members right now from all over the world. A lot of them are soldiers that are either active or retired that have dealt with PTSD, now suffering from addiction and, like marital issues. But I'll tell you, it's been very enlightening because the guys love to share. And that's what it is. It's about opening dialogue. It's about giving men the permission to say it's okay. As Scott said, it's okay to not be okay. We're giving you the permission. I'm giving you the permission. All the men out there, permission to speak whatever's on your mind, but speak deeply. Don't hide anything. Don't be ashamed of anything. Come out and just be honest and open and truthful, and realize that there are so many other men that are dealing with so many issues that are similar to yours. We are a brotherhood. It's not a support group. It's a brotherhood. We look out for our brothers. And that's what I want to preach about that.
Wow. I'm blown away. And I want people to make sure that you check out 4S for Life. Reach out, whether you want to donate or get involved or just be aware of what's going on. And maybe get some inspiration because, I don't end up with a lot of people that just kind of like give me goosebumps and inspire me. But Jacques, you're one of those people that do. And it makes me want to take what I'm doing to the next level. And all of us should be thinking about that. How can I do something that lends itself not only to my own good mental health, but to help other people? Because it's all great. You could open up a store for people to come in. But when you've got the dad saying, no, we don't take help from people, we're too proud for that. That's where we got to stop all of that nonsense and allow ourselves to get help. Your wife, does she, what role does she play at this point? Is she like really supportive of all the things that you're doing out there? I mean, have you guys grown into the people that you're supposed to be at this point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's always been my biggest supporter, my biggest fan. I mean, she's always, even if there's events she can't make or we may do fundraisers, she makes all the big fundraisers, but some she can't make. She'll always, wish me good luck and I love you, I'm proud of you, and Mary knows this. Like right now, I actually stepped back from my organization. I've been going through like a 6-week sort of stretch of my own struggle with my mental health that I put on the back burner for these last 3 years during COVID, where I was helping everybody else. And I sort of put a lot of my baggage to the wayside. And I didn't feel like I gave my wife enough of my attention, even though she'll never say that. And I don't think she feels that way, but I don't think I did. I think I had to step back after doing a guided meditation session and a body scan. I sort of awakened a lot of stuff inside. I went, whoa, man, I got to step back. And I made the decision after talking to my wife and my sister. I also had a conversation with Mary. I had one with Christopher and got some great advice. And I said, you know what? I'm going to step back and I'm going to let the board run it. And I just have to do this for a little while. And now that we've done that, my wife and I, it's like I'm courting her all over again. It's like this romance has been, no, it really has. It's been just the two of us and it's been great. It's just been able to be reconnecting with her on that deep, deep level. And it's amazing. It's the best feeling in the world.
That's a huge part of growth.
I love that.
That's a big part of growth is to recognize that you need time too. That, the balance in your life can't always be about, listen, I've got this great, I've got to help. Sometimes we've got to step back and say, yeah, but am I okay? And because God knows we don't want to lose your message out there. So, Jacques got to take care of Jacques too. It's just amazing. Where do we stand now? It's different. It's a different world than 30 years ago. Mary and I talk about this too, about, in the past, certain people didn't talk about certain things and now people talk about things. Are we getting better? Are we getting better at doing things? I know we still got a long way to go. But what do you want to see? If your dream could come true in 5 years, what do you want people to know and do?
No, I've always had this thing. I think I mentioned it to Chris too. I would like, and not even, well, yeah, I guess in 5 years, I would actually like all the people that we're talking about now, and all the people that are healers and in that realm and the work that we're doing, is I want to get together in the middle of our country, maybe it's Kansas, wherever, in a giant field with all these facilitators, you know what, and have all of us there with all our messages and our stories and everything. And I just want people to stand there and hold hands, not a kumbaya moment, but feel the energy. Just stand there, grab that person to the left and grab that person to the right, and just take that couple minutes of just complete silence. You know what? You're out in the middle of a field and all you hear is the breeze coming across. No one's speaking, no one doing anything. And just feel that energy, that abundance of energy. And have us get up and just all say a few words. Listen, you know what? Everyone says there's no one out there. We have this one, we have this, and we have all of this to offer. You know, what took the last time this country came together was 9/11. It came to that realization that someone came in and kicked the shit out of us in our own backyard. And then we stood together. And if you think about this, Scott, no one saw race. No one saw sexual denomination. It wasn't gay, lesbian, whatever. It wasn't poor, rich. We were all Americans. We were all stood together, unified. But it took that. So why does it take that to unify us? You know, why does it always have to be a dick swinging contest or whatever? Because, well, that's what it ends up being. It's, well, you know, it's sort of like the countries in the world. China's this and Russia's that. You know what? Stop all the bullshit. You know what? We're all human beings. Just let everyone be. Why do we need to make negative comments or not help that person or hold the door for some? It's just simple, random acts of kindness that make the difference in a person's day. It's such a simple concept. So I just want everyone to just sort of take a step back before you make that comment, before you flip someone off, before you say that curse word under your breath. Think about what that person might be going through. You don't know if they're on the edge. They could be on the edge of something bigger than you can imagine. And we could be that push or we could be that pull. So do you want to be the push or do you want to be the pull?
Wow. I love the 9/11 thought, because if you look at the photographs of people helping other people in 9/11, everyone is covered in this gray ash.
Yeah.
There's no color. It's all like just gray. And hands were being reached out to help. Hands were being lifted up to ask for help. It was all just in that moment. Nothing is important more than this person in front of me. And we've lost that. And it takes tragedy to bring that around. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't think we're in a tragedy situation right now, read some numbers. Jacques, you were mentioning the suicide rates and the things that are going on. We are in crisis, are we not?
Mm-hmm. We are. Absolutely. And as I said, if people didn't catch it, because I think that was backstage. So, and I'm focusing on men, but and Mary's got good statistics too, because we were talking. I know Mary brought us some good stats too. I don't know if she has them there, but for all those men out there, just take a moment to think of this. 510,000 men globally a year commit suicide.
A year.
Just let that resonate with you. A year. That's 500,000 men. That's not even women and children. That's 500,000 men. We're losing our brothers, our fathers, our sons, because they are not allowed to open up to people. Stop with that bullshit. Let them talk. Listen to them. You need to notice things. And the one example I use, I think I did use this with Mary. You remember, you know Twitch, right? Scott Twitch, the dancer, just ended up taking his own life. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was watching, as I heard that happen, and I was a big fan of Twitch. My wife was too. It was a horrifying thing that happened. But when I look back and the wife had said that she didn't notice anything was wrong. So I said, you know what? I'm going to look back at the reels on TikTok. And I looked back months before and I watched the decrease in the way he acted. He was smiling, happy. It was a lot longer. Then you notice as the smile wasn't as wide. You could tell in his eyes. People that can read, you can read it. I saw that, and it was a horrible decline, to that level. And then, of course, he goes and gets up. Now, when your husband says he's going to go get a hotel room and spend time by himself, it's a red flag right there. All of a sudden, this guy, happy TikTok dancer, now he wants to go spend time by himself, away from his family. He loves his kids, loves his wife. Yeah. But now he wants to segregate himself and he wants to get a hotel room. That should have been a red flag right there. Call somebody. Hello.
Absolutely. And it's probably happened over and over again.
Sure.
Robin Williams, a great case where there were people close to him that knew that he was suffering, but nobody knows what to do. And again, we're afraid to bring it out. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to embarrass them, or I don't want them to hate me. If somebody's about to jump off a bridge, you reach out and you grab them. I don't care if they turn around and slug me and hate me for the rest of their lives. They'll have a life to hate me with. That's fine. But when it comes to our loved ones, we're afraid to upset them. You know what? They're all standing on the edge of a bridge. Reach out your hand, pull them back in. Whatever they choose to do with that life is fine, but it's their life. At least they've got it. Stop pretending that we're all okay. Men, start opening up. And everyone else, start opening up your hearts and listen, because we're just as guilty for not listening. We're just as guilty for just saying, how are you? And hearing the word fine and then moving on and not looking at the person or really paying attention. We've become very kind of placid in the whole communication. Pay attention to what's going on around you, your loved ones especially. Mary, I mean, this has been like, again, another one of my favorite shows, just going on and on. What do you think about all this, Mary?
Well, I mean, and it's show number 10, which, I'm celebrating, thinking about that. The more, and we've all proven this, the three of us, and as all of our friends as well, the more we come clean with the things that are going on with us and with our mental health, just like you did, Jacques. You went on and you did a live and you said, guys, I need a timeout for a little bit. I need some self-care. I'll be back. I just need to go and figure some things out. And I think we can all do that. If we all just take that one small commitment to talk about our own mental health to other people, then it gives them permission to do it as well. And then maybe they'll go and talk about it to somebody else and give somebody else permission, and we can spread it. It's a ripple effect. And, I so appreciate you, Jacques, for coming on and talking to us today and going through your story and sharing it with our audience. So thank you.
Yeah,
well,
Jacques,
I'm honored to have you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
No, we listen. I truly believe the greatest moments of my life came at those moments when I was able to say, I don't know. I'm lost. I need help. That's when changes happen in my life. That's when good things happen in my life. And every time something bad happened in my life, it's usually preceded by a whole lot of stuffing darkness down inside of me. So open up. Jacques, one more time, I want to invite people to check out your website. It's 4s4life.com. And, I'm sure there's ways that people can get involved or get in touch with you or whatever they can do, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm on social media. I'm Instagram, Facebook. You can visit either one of I have multiple pages on there. 4S for Life. You can message us through that. And if you are a man that, like I said, in crisis, this is it. It's hashtag man up, not shut up. You look it up on Facebook. It's a private group. It's safe and secure. I'm the only admin on that page, so everything goes right directly through me. If you have any questions on that, you can feel free to message me on that. We'd love to have you and join up and see what it's all about. So
beautiful.
And I don't know what better way to end the show than my mom is telling that this was an amazing show. So if my mom says it was amazing, it means it was amazing.
That's right. It's all about mom.
She's truly one of my heroes, my mom.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, again, I want to thank Jacques for being with us, 4s4life.com, and all the great things. Mary Kay, as always, beautiful and just amazing. You are, and I'm just so happy to be a part of this. And I want to thank everyone out there for joining us, and Brandon and Lynn and Ron and Sandy and Karen and of course Christopher and all of you guys out there. Thank you. And
Lynn's there too. Yeah.
And Lynn. Yes, absolutely. But final thought, Mary?
Final thought. I just want to tell everybody that I believe in you. I believe in you. No matter what you're going through, I believe in you. You will be okay.
And as I always say, make sure you start every day. You do one nice thing for somebody else, two nice things for yourself, and you're never going to have a bad day. All right. For Mary Kay, I'm Scott J. and our special guest, Jacques. Thanks for joining us. 4s4life.com. Check it out. We'll see you next time.